Hello viewers, I want to play a game. So far in these reviews you watch, you take pleasure in seeing others voice them, but you do not do anything to convey your own. As you watch this video, Doug here will review the next 3 films of the highly popular franchise Saw. Your task is to watch them all. If you do not, well, I actually don't have another way. All I have is this malware virus thing, and clearly I already threatened you with that. If you do not, Doug will never do another review again. Okay, that is a bit pretentious of me. He doesn't know I took over his review. Crap. Please, just help him. Otherwise, I will find him and put him through a test, and if he fails, he will die. Maybe I should have led with that. Live or die. Make your choice.
Oh boy, a sequel to the highly popular movie Saw? I never thought I'd see the day. They actually figured it out and knew what story to tell after the biggest twist to ever come around in the last decade. Alright, maybe not in the last decade, but here we are to Saw 2. Saw 2 is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, and he ends up directing this one, the third one, and the fourth one, hence why I'm doing this triple review. These 3 films are heavily direct sequels. So it's almost in the same vein and very much like the series of Star Trek movies. Very odd comparison, I know, but if you really think about it, Star Trek the motion picture was kind of a movie on its own. It held up by itself regardless if you hated it or not. But, of course, when Wrath of Khan happened, The Search for Spock and The Voyage Home, they were all connected in some way. One led into the other, and that's essentially how this all is from here on out. From movie 2 onwards, it's kind of like that, but the only difference with this is that this is directed by one guy. So this film picks up an undisclosed amount of time after the events of the first film. Detective Matthews is a self-centered, self-absorbed, and in a world of self-loathing, alienating his son.
I think I should go back to Mom's.
Well then go! Nearly the people around him and the police force.
Can you think of anyone that would want to do this to your guy?
Well, he's an informant, Carrie. You want to list of possible suspects? Grab a phone book.
And when a murder brings him onto the scene of the crime, where Jigsaw actually calls him out, his former partner, Carrie, find themselves in a game more intricate than they can ever imagine. Jigsaw has Matthew's son among 7 others trapped in a house trying to survive a deadly game and a nerve agent coursing through their system, and they have to go through each door to find an antidote. This movie also explores John Kramer's backstory and how he became Jigsaw. So with our movie here, it's actually very interesting because we get a lot more Jigsaw in this. A lot more than realized. In Saw 1, you got mere glimpses. Here in Saw 2, you get a full-blown appearance. And you get also a lot more outdoor activity from the first one. So all in all, those 2 little aspects really dumb down the claustrophobic feel the first one provided. There are double the amount of characters than before, where they're easy to keep track of. Don't get me wrong, but it's because that there are so many, and with a methodical game being played on 2 fronts, from Detective Matthews to these convicts in this house with Detective Matthews' son in the mix, it leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot going on, and it almost gets a little overwhelming, and in some ways it also leads to disappointment, which is kind of sad. Now that's not without saying more Jigsaw is bad. I'm saying that seeing him was a little unexpected, but they wrote him very well to a point where they used him very wisely, and he stayed a very methodical, very cold and calculating person, and that made him that much more compelling, even though I found out more of his backstory. And that is actually one of the strengths of the film. The writers of the sequel knew they probably couldn't top the standards of the story, so they took the aftermath and went, okay, the first one happened. No doubts there. We'll even pay homages to it. We'll even have Jigsaw in it. a lot more. We'll have more traps, we'll follow the detective side more often, and we'll keep the victims in the front too. The concepts are really strong in this movie. The execution, not so much. A lot of this movie comes off hammy, a little dopey, not quite aware of what it wants to be. And then it tries to recreate a lot of the moments the first film did. One moment, it wants to be a methodical conversation of the human condition. Jigsaw and the detective talking. That's basically it. That's all that Jigsaw really wants Detective Matthews to do. The rules are simple. Have him sit down, talk with him, and he will find his son in a safe and secure state. In the next, it's a gore fest of people dying left and right. And I mean, a lot of the people held captive in the house die for one apparent reason or another. Not all of them are existent, and not all of them are explored. And the nerve gas that keeps them going as a motive to get the hell out, it's like they can't escape anyways. It's way too much. And even worse, people die before they get to their traps anyway. So the tone of the film is a little inconsistent because no one's working together. It gives you some lackluster scenes and not nearly as many traps as you want there to be. And as I said, the movie has just too much going on at once. You have detectives trying to save his son, and all he has to do is sit down and talk. Then you get, he's too antsy, he's too moody to be bothered by such a simple task. I mean, I found that fine. In fact, that entire segment I found much more compelling than the ex-convicts in the house. And with the ex-convicts in the house, I just didn't find any of them compelling. It's enough, but none of them really stood out to me in any way. That, of course, except for Amanda, who is back in yet another trap when we were introduced to her in Saw 1. So there's a bit of a mystery as to why is she back, what's going on with her, and you do get some explanation. And then there's a lot of things that are kind of unspoken about, and your logic kind of comes in and goes, wait a minute. So, what happened to Lawrence Gordon? What was the fate of Adam? How was Amanda back when she played the game before? Why isn't Detective Carey doing more, even though she's more of the Jigsaw expert? That's not how this works. Honestly, there's just a lot left up into interpretations. Again, here the problem is reviewing the Saw franchise. I mean, every flaw I mention in each movie, there's a possibility that there's a strong backing theory that resonates with the mythology. Many people come up with reasons and ideas to why one thing is one way and how something else could happen. So a lot of this can be incorrectly regarded as flaws. So I am not a hater of this franchise. I find it quite impressive. I waited year after year after year for every installment to come out in theaters and in DVD. And in fact, at a time, I would watch this movie more than the first film. And I loved Saw 1. And for $4 million, this is a guilty pleasure of a lifetime. But like I said, it is bogged down by doing too much, not enough answers with the hopes of making a sequel. And what do you know? They made plenty of them. So the ending of this film results into you kind of saw that coming while living and breathing in the same vein as the first Saw film. It's not nearly as shocking and jaw-dropping and groundbreaking as the first one. But all in all, the actor who plays Jigsaw, Tobin Bell, is fantastic. Danny Wahlberg is really good in this film as the loose cannon detective trying to get his son back. But the other actors range from tolerable to good, depending on whom we're talking about. In the end, I waver back and forth with this one. I liked it when it came out, and I still kind of like it now, but it's really more heavily flawed in the first film, and I left disappointed, so it doesn't quite leave an impression on me, and rewatching it again, so time had kind of killed this movie for me. So all in all, I'm just going to give Saw 2 alright. I didn't like it any more than I hated it, so you get that equal alright. And I own it on DVD, so it was good enough. It's good, but not great. No time to lose, we're gonna get into Saw 3.
If you're still with us, you passed the first test. Now, do what most people do not do, and comment below, and tell Doug what you thought of Saw 2 in your own merits. Take a look around you. Know how much this is important. Comment. Make your choice.
Saw 3 is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman again, and it stars Tobin Bell as the infamous Jigsaw, the man who puts you through a series of tests in hopes to change who you are because of your sins. Here he puts to the test a vengeful man who is hell-bent on getting his pound of flesh against the man who killed his son in a deadly car accident. Meanwhile, Jigsaw is definitely on his deathbed, and with the help of his apprentice Amanda, they both force a doctor, Lynn, to perform surgery on John Kramer to keep him alive. With all the fates intertwined, Jigsaw literally plays his final game with so many of these lives in the balance. Now, where I had issues with the second film, mostly of it being unfocused, Saw 3 is definitely a lot more focused. It has a lot more emotion to its core than the first two, and it looks to construct a creative and cohesive way to tell a story that is a lot more effective than its predecessors. Jigsaw, again, is very prominent in this film. Like the last one, Tobin Bell does such a great job playing this cold, calculated serial killer, putting these people to the test with his moral ambitions questioned in the process. The victims of his deadly game are a lot better than a bunch of ex-cons stuck in a house trying to outsmart and lose focus of a similar goal. Jeff, the father who's hell-bent on vengeance, is set on a path to confront the people responsible for the death of his child. That being a witness, a judge, and the man responsible. And that is what I absolutely loved about this installment. It acts like a finale. It seeks to correct the mistakes of the first two by addressing them in this story, and it pretty much starts us off with a bang and never lets up. Now, while I enjoyed the third film, I also had some legit frustrations, and ones that can be simply justified, but ultimately crappy nonetheless. So, when Jeff is facing his series of tests, he is really conflicted of saving the lives of the people he feels wronged him. So that results in him just standing there, watching these people die before him. Whether they live or not, I won't give away. But it's literally frustrating when he stands there, the people are screaming in agony, and he won't do anything.
Oh, God! Help me!
Yeah, I hear you.
Please help me!
I wonder what this stick does.
Who cares about the stick?
Yes, I know. He's a man who is hell-bent on the revenge, and Jigsaw is helping him exact it. But seriously, save the person and deal with them in your own way. Why sit there and listen to their screams and do nothing?
Ah! Help me.
Hope I don't end up like that Saw 2 poster.
I hope you do. My arm.
Shh! I'm concentrating.
Ah!
Why write it in such a way where this man is so selfish in his desires that he would be able to condone murder and literally not learn a thing? That's the point of Jigsaw's game. So it's at this point I really blame the direction in writing. I just felt like it could have been tweaked just a little bit to make it where he's not so selfish, like there is something redeemable about him, but ultimately there isn't anything redeemable about him. Nonetheless, the ending to this film gets very heavy-handed and bases itself on chance, but when the pieces come into play and things do unfold, it works very well. It's just your logic and reasoning that will probably take over by this point, and you'll go, wait a minute. Huh? And the twist really acts like a finale to the Saw series itself. In the end, Saw 3 is a stronger film, and probably the strongest in the franchise. And for that, I liked it, and enough to own on DVD. So this is where things are going to get crazy, because in order to review Saw 4, we're going to get into some spoilers. So here's your warning. I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, go see the first 3 films if you have not. Because by the end of this review, I will reveal the twist because too much has happened by this point to not mention it. So let's get into Saw 4.
Congratulations. You're still around. While Doug appreciates you sticking around, you still have a job to do. Comment below your thoughts on Saw 3. Did you agree or disagree? But trust me when I say if you disagree, there will be hell to pay. And no, I'm not talking about a malware virus again, okay? Shut up. Keep watching.
It's been a rather gray theme in my reviews for the Saw franchise, hasn't it? Either I haven't been picking my clothes very well, or maybe that's just the color scheme of the show itself. But just to jump into Saw 4, everything takes place sometime after the third movie, directly after the death of Jigsaw. As I said, Saw 3 acts like a finale to the series itself. This movie takes place after those events. So how on earth did they manage a sequel with Jigsaw dead? The traps should be over. The killing is done. Well, due to the creative wit of the writers and Darren Lynn Bousman's drive to keep things moving, this is probably the fastest paced movie in the franchise. This movie is really about how Jigsaw can manipulate others post-mortem, as Lieutenant Daniel Rigg is obsessed with saving everyone because unfortunately everyone around him keeps dying. Jigsaw puts him to the test by facing him into a series of traps, blurring the lines of right and wrong, while the ultimate endgame of Jigsaw's legacy comes full circle. And it leaves a nice little tail for all the rest of the sequels to come through. But Saw 4 is literally that movie that seems like a cash grab and a loophole to try and make more films. When I talk to people about the Saw movies, I usually get a varied response of where they actually stopped. Many people have seen all 7, and others have stopped at a certain point. Some I've heard have gone to 3, some have to 4, some stopped at 5. Never have I really heard anyone say stopping at 6, but the general consensus is that people do not like 5 or 7. Well, we're going to definitely get into that later, but this is essentially kind of a varied response of when people have stopped, so much as that I've heard more people saying they finished the entire series, and then whoever stopped, the numbers vary. With Saw 4, throughout this film, we're given what's left of the characters and what kind of game they have to play, since Jigsaw's got everything, pre-planned out. We also have a new set of characters trying to uncover Jigsaw's new apprentice, apparently, because Amanda's not exactly brawn in a lot of these traps now. Since every single trap seems to be escalating more, it requires probably a third set of hands. So the FBI looks to uncover that, while Lieutenant Rigg is forced to see traps laid out for their victims that Jigsaw has chosen. And it's all set up for Rigg to understand his obsession shouldn't be what it is. But ultimately, the movie only conveys the obsession, but the wrongdoing of this should result in some sort of redemption or realization, divine intervention, if you will. And ultimately, that doesn't happen. If there's one thing that the film does very effectively is explore more of Jigsaw's past, which John Kramer shows up prominently in all those scenes. It's not that John is now suddenly a sympathetic character, but we're more understanding to his plight, especially since a lot of heartbreaking things happened to him that set him on this path. But unfortunately, this film suffers from doing too much too frequently, just like Saw 2. Logic goes out the window, and then the message tries to keep itself intact, but it ultimately goes nowhere. Many people would agree to the fact that the twist is a little unbearably unrealistic, considering how much there is so much going on, but I'd have to say it's probably the most entertaining of the franchise, considering the movie itself, and even that twist. I think it's one of my favorite twists, despite the unrealistic nature of it. No one learns anything. People just die. Entertaining doesn't change the fact that the series of films gets more and more ridiculous as it goes on. Saw 4 is the start of that. For that, I would have to say I liked Saw 4 for the most part, and I own it on DVD, but by no means is this a perfect film. It's just good-ish. Here's what we gotta do here. I have to kind of ruin the ending of Saw 4, and that also means covering Saw 3 and Saw 2, for the most part. In order to review Saw 5, it kind of takes in a new plot, so to speak, while still kind of keeping the same threads, but it would be really, really hard to tell you nothing to convey all the rest of those plots. So if you guys don't want to get into spoilers, have a great one. Thank you so much for watching. What did you think about Saw 4, 3, or 2? I'd greatly appreciate it. Subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Okay, so if you stuck around, here's the deal. Quick and dirty, Saw 2 kind of saw the ending of knowing that Amanda is now the accomplice to Jigsaw, but we also noticed the fundamental flaw. Amanda's making a lot of the games unwinnable, and Saw 3 addresses that, and apparently Jigsaw has been testing Amanda the entire time. And so when she fails that, and she pretty much just ruined the lives of everyone because she's emotionally unstable, she dies, Jigsaw dies, Jeff dies, his wife, who was surprisingly the surgeon the entire time, dies. And then we get Saw 4, and there was that autopsy scene, which I thought was great, but unfortunately, Saw 4 is at the same time as Saw 3. And that is so mind-boggling that Jigsaw knew all of this could happen. And instead of kind of like a cash-grabbing, weird, stupid sequel, we kind of get some thought put into this, saying, hey, look, we understand that this is kind of weird making a fourth Saw movie where the Saw 3 said, hey, we just killed off our main villain. Well, truth be told, there's actually more to it than that, and we also have the accomplice. So, Mark Hoffman is the new Jigsaw killer, so to speak, and that isn't explained in Saw 4. So ultimately, Saw 4 is at the same time as Saw 3. This has been a very interesting trilogy overall, and I'd have to say I liked a lot of what they had to offer in all of this, but ultimately it is also very ridiculous, especially since Saw 4 is at the same time as 3. So for that, I hope you all enjoyed my reviews. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you like this, please subscribe, and I'll get you more videos in the future.
Congratulations. You passed the final test. You even stayed through the spoiler talk. Congratulations. Wait, I already said that already. What? You expect me to say more? You what just happened? You're not supposed to see me? Get away, go. Get. This isn't me. This is.
No, great. Now the voice is gone, and don't look at me.